Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. Got an interesting video for you today in terms of topic. It's hard for me to actually call a topic. I talk about releasing my measurements, but I want to preface it in terms of a macro point of why am I talking about my measurements. It's going to basically piggyback off of prior videos I've done, and it has to do with the Bacch-sp. It has to do with show reports where I talked about two reviewers, myself and an absolute sound person, having totally different opinions in the same room. It comes back down to we all hear differently. And with the Bach has really focused this even more so. I'm going to have a review from JR with WAM Engineering, WallyTools, analog guy. He hasn't even listened to his DAC in over a year. So, and I probably have more DSP being used in my system right now than probably anybody on the planet. When you consider Bach, which few people have, direct, mini DSP, SHD, different crossover points for my subs, different timing, slopes. I'm probably using DSP as much or more than anybody on the planet right now. So to have that collide, an analog purist guy with DSP in my room, I'm going to share with you. I'm not going to share with you. I'm not going to spoil it. Let him tell you what he heard and what he appreciated with the Bach. All right, guys, we just had a great dinner with some friends here in Houston. Back here is JR again. Luckily, I was in town. We got a chance to do the Bacch-sp demo, and I'm not going to put any words in his mouth. You know, what did you hear? What did you like?
Well, there's no doubt I prefer with the Bach in versus not in. Except on a small handful of recordings that, as you explained, and it now seems very evident, that it was due to rather wonky recording situations from the get-go.
Right.
Yeah, just the feeling of envelopment is significantly enhanced. You know, having the sensation of instrumentation or sound effects that are immediately to the left and right of you or whatnot, you can take it or leave it. That wasn't as important to me. What was really cool was just having the room boundaries kind of decay, just kind of fizzle away, and close your eyes, and you no longer feel like you're in a small room. You're hearing a presentation, and you're part of it. It's a very different presentation. That's yeah, pretty addictive.
All right, yeah. So, just wanted to give you guys a little feedback from an analog guy, and so yeah, appreciate you coming out. I know you got a lot of engagements here. Be sure to call him if you do have turntable setup needs, and as well measurements and subwoofer setup. Check out my video on that if you haven't checked that out, and he'll be happy to come to your place too. I'm going to be doing an engagement with you and Doug in the near future, but I'll leave that as a secret for coming up soon.
All right. Cheers.
The macro point that came out of that, one thing that I realized what he was very interested in, and being a guy that, yeah, we're on different sides of the coin with analog versus digital, but we also value measurements, sub setup, very much in alignment with things that we believe in there, and how important measurements and tuning things are, whether it's with room treatments, DSP, combination of those things. And so what came out of hearing him see my system, hear the Bach, was that I think he was very impressed, on top of what he's going to mention in the video excerpt I'm going to play for you shortly, is how powerful the measurement tools are in the Bach in terms of giving you in-room, in-ear measurements at your listening position with those binaural mics that are very flat to 20 hertz. What was very interesting, and I alluded to this in my prior video, but just to reiterate, and I'll show you, I'm going to jump in my chair and I'll bring up the measurements so you can see real time my measurements, JR's measurements at the same listening position, same system, everything the same. How our ears, just the way they're shaped and whatnot, can influence what we hear. And why is that important? Because, as I said in the prior video, you should never rely on other people's opinions for purchasing gear, especially just one person. If you have anecdotal experience in the past, hearing the same things as them, that gives you a little bit, but that could be coincidental too, trust me. There's a lot of these reviewers and people that are dealers or whatever that want to control what you think, that want to control what you hear, that want to curate for you. I was in that boat of not having a YouTube channel, not being kind of one of those guys. And I'm not going to sell out you guys because I was in that boat. Do not ever fall for that problem of letting other people curate what you believe. Now, you can use their opinions. You can use their experience and their wisdom. All of these guys may have certain value to provide to you. But at the end of the day, what I want to highlight today is you're going to hear different than everybody else. JR and I have totally different hearing, especially over 2,000 hertz. And in most cases, the ear pinna effect is going to affect stuff over that 2,000 hertz range. And so the Bach, what's this added benefit on top of what you're going to hear JR talk about and others have talked about in terms of the spatial cues and all the amazing things. But the measurements alone teach you a very valuable lesson that we all hear differently and that you need to ultimately trust your own ears. And if you have DSP, then whatever anomalies you have or hear differently than somebody else, you can now correct them. Most of the things, especially over 2,000 hertz, can be corrected very easily in DSP. It does not require a lot of stuff in the bass region. That's not really impacted by your ear pinna, which is a little more challenging with DSP. You can do it with more than frequency response, crossover points, timing, phase. Those are things that still fall under DSP. But this is showing you how important it is, number one, to not trust other people's opinions exclusively. Use DSP to address your issues and tastes. And then the benefit of what the Bach brings to the table on top of what you've heard in the various reviews that I've given you excerpts from. And what was really cool as well is I've had somebody over. I didn't have this on video, but somebody actually has recordings. He's an EDM artist. He came over and he has EDM recordings on Tidal. And we were able to bring up, and he was able to listen to his recordings that he mastered with the Bach. Pretty amazing. On the way out, I didn't have this on video. We were just walking out. He's like, you made me rethink everything I've heard and thought in the past with a system like this and with the ability to provide those spatial cues. And so nothing I could say and nothing he should believe, just hearing me talk about it, is a replacement for him being in my listening chair, coming here, hearing for himself. And so that's what I encourage you to do. If you could come to Houston, if you could come to the shows, do a demo with whatever speaker you like. Maybe it's a core. You want to hear those? I think you're going to be impressed. That's my opinion. But maybe you're not. Okay? It's potential. Same thing with MBLs. I love the MBLs. Some people don't like it. You need to figure that out for yourself. Don't just take my opinion. I'm pretty sure 99% of you are going to like the Bach. I haven't found anybody yet, and I've purposely shown you people that are analog guys just to show you how well it crosses over biases and stuff. The people aren't in favor of DSP normally. But again, you need to try it yourself. There's a 14-day money-back guarantee with the Bach, so just keep that in mind if you do want to buy it without being able to come to Houston. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump in my chair, and I'm going to show you the difference so you can kind of visualize, number one, the difference in ear pinna effect for both me and JR, and then what my room measurements are, because the other problem I have with all these people, especially reviewers, they don't share their room measurements. They want you to hire them, or they want you to take their advice and follow it. Where's your room measurements? Where are they? Like, what basis and benchmark do you have that measurements don't tell you the whole story, but that's one thing at least that can translate objectively to other people, or at least if you know what frequency responses are. And I encourage you to go back to my video where we do blind testing. I did blind testing on film live, and I brought up a website where you could test yourself for blind testing, knowing different frequencies, knowing what delta in dBs you can hear. Probably you're going to be able to hear at least half dB or 1 dB change. Imagine that over a wider range with DSP, how much that changes. That's one thing that amazed even JR. We made just a very slight change in frequency response after he did his measurements, and he could hear the difference very clearly when I turned it on and off. And so you need to test yourself. You need to know what these people that are holding themselves as experts can do. And if they don't share any of that information, one of the things you have to ask is why. I'll give a credit to people like Michael Fremmer. Now, I have showed his measurements because he publishes them. I mean, he's not hiding this. I'm just taking it from the magazine, what his in-room measurements are. And I'm not a fan of those measurements in terms of what my taste would like, but at least he's publishing them and giving you a reference point that if you know what that frequency response looks like, and I can put I can make my speakers do that same thing. It still won't be identical. You know, there's timing and other things involved, but I know what I would like and not like mostly about his room and his sound system based on those measurements. And so that gives me a benchmark to know then when I read his reviews, whether it will translate to me or not. Other people never even publish this stuff, never share their measurements. And so what I want to make sure, I've done it before when I've done my Dirac and Mini DSP SHD reviews and stuff. So I've shared some of those in the steps that I've done. But I wanted to give you a more up-to-date look based on the Bacch in ear at my listening position. I've never shared that before. Very few people can even do that. I'm going to jump in my chair, show you for the first time what my room sounds like. The fun thing is that with this headphone module on the Bacch, and I might bring this to Exponent, but I can record a filter that bases what my system sounds like in my room, and then bring a Bacch to Exponent, put on headphones, and for a large percentage of it will reflect what it's like to be in my room. There's a little nuances, and it's not 100% perfect in that regard. Nothing can be 100% like being in the room, but it will give you a flavor of what it's like to be in my listening room. Truly an amazing module that I just experienced with the Bacch. But that's for another video altogether. Today I want to just focus on how important it is, just the measurement standpoint and value-added stuff with the Bacch that can help you, and things that you need to start thinking about before you just blindly trust spending thousands of dollars on XYZ person's recommendation. These people have controlled what people think and what people have bought for far too long. It's one of the reasons why I started my channel. You should never ever just take my opinion alone, but if mine syncs with you, that's part of the deal. And what I'm doing on top of that is showing you what my room measurements are, so you can say, okay, I've got some objective basis and then some anecdotal basis that what I say syncs with what you hear, your ears are similar, then you have more comfort. I want more reviewers to do the same thing. If they do the same thing, then you can know who to trust better than just whatever they claim, or how many followers they have, how many subscribers they have, how many readers they have. All of those things I think are a minefield for audiophiles that inevitably lead them on a gear merry-go-round forever. So without further ado, let me jump in my chair, share my screen, share my measurements, and we'll talk a little bit more. Okay guys, what you're seeing on the screen here is the Bacch-sp that I showed you in a prior video. I'm going to be looking over here, so I apologize I'm not looking at you guys for the most part. But this is a screen that if you haven't watched my prior video where I kind of walk through the interface, the GUI interface, and show you what you're going to have with the Bacch, that'll be helpful. But just ignore most of the things if you haven't watched that or not familiar with it. I'm going to strictly talk about the measurement section and the bins, which are really the only things that you're ever going to use, especially the first day just to set up the thing. It's mainly set it and forget it. But I'm going to show you the value-added tools that you may use on a regular basis if you're doing room treatments to kind of correct things that the measurements tell you and improve at your ear listening position. These are the things you're going to probably use as a value added that, irrespective of whether you use the Bacch or not, can help you in your room hear things that are better at your ears. So, as I showed you in the past, there's different bins for each measurement. And what I've been using these bins for is for different people that come to my room. And what's very fascinating is that my room, without any ear pin effect in the ears, if I just take the binaural mics outside of my ears and get a frequency response, this is the result. If you look at this screen here, the frequency response I get. And this is intentional. I can make it totally flat if I want, but I'm doing mostly a Fletcher-Munson curve here because to my ears, this sounds good with most recorded material. And so this curve is intentional, mostly flat, especially in the bass, very flat. And don't worry about this roll off. Once it gets to a certain point, just slight head movements can impact that, so it kind of cuts this part off. But this is intentional, and so this is very good measurements in room, 20 to 20,000 hertz for the most part. But here's the difference, and this is what an REW mic, a Dirac, a typical single mic in your listening position will tell you, although in this case it's binaurals outside of the ear. But here is the difference. Let me show you, once you put these mics in your ear, how much the ear impacts it and how much it impacts it for two different people. What I'm going to show you first is what mine looks like when it's in my ear. And again, don't ignore this part here. One of the things that the roll off here, when you're doing a Bach measurement, unlike what I just showed you, it can do a different time window to try to get it as an anechoic measurement for creating a Bach filter. In the future, this graph is going to be improved, so it'll show in-room response of the bass. And so this will be flat like I did with this one, a longer time window. So don't ignore that. This is basically the same. But here is the difference of the ear pinna effect, okay? Your ear pinna and how much it accentuates certain frequencies. For me, it's a narrow, semi-narrow range between 3 to 4K. Quite interesting peak there. And then again, a little bit over 10K and a little bit of dip here. Again, reference that to where outside of my ears, what do I get? Pretty flat here. So again, what you measure with REW or whatever tools you're doing, Clio measurements or whatever, especially in the higher frequencies, our ear pinna changes that. Now, this was mine, same gear, same listening position. JR, who I just showed you his feedback on the Bach, I'll show you what his measurements. I put that in bin 1. So let me switch to bin 1. This is his measurements. Again, ignore the roll off here. This is flat, much like bin 3 if I would have used a longer time window. And it actually piggybacks on what JR's video. If you didn't watch the video I did on getting keys to better bass, when you have a time window of creating frequency response like this, very small, 3 milliseconds, it doesn't give time for the bass to fully flesh out at these lower frequencies. Kind of proves what he said. You need your room to hear bass, and certainly longer frequencies, you almost need that reflection to hear a fully fleshed out bass. Not that you can't hear bass outside of a room, but this will prove it. At 3 milliseconds versus a longer time cycle, it changes the response in the room. Gear didn't change, just changing the time cycle of the measurements. Look how flat. When you consider the room interactions, this is how flat my bass is. And it would be the same here if we did enough time window to show the full impact of the room. For filter purposes, Edgar and the Bach software wants to try to get it more anechoically. That's why the time window is smaller. Hopefully you follow that. But in short, ignore this roll off here. What you really want to focus on, and what I'm trying to show you guys, is that the ear pinna effect for him, for JR, is a little bit wider, from like almost 2 kilohertz all the way up to 6-7 kilohertz of a magnitude. His ear is focusing it a little bit more. Over here though, super flat, little bit of dip here and dip here, but he's going to hear different than me with this response, with a curve that is this, based on this for my room, in-room measurements. So what I'm trying to show you guys is that it doesn't mean I'm right, doesn't mean he's right. It's to show you whatever you measure with software, if you even measure, which a lot of people don't even go to that first step. That's a problem. If you're a reviewer and you don't show your in-room measurements, this at least gives people some objective value that will translate. Not 100%. Everybody's going to make fun of measurements and say, it doesn't tell you everything. Well, it tells you something, okay? And not a single manufacturer in this hobby makes a piece of gear without measurements, unless you're talking about these ridiculous tweak people that make stupid stuff, okay? they don't need measurements because they know the stuff isn't measurable, and they're selling you. I'm going to go into that. But most any reputable manufacturer uses measurements, okay? Because it does tell you something. And trust me, you want that information from anybody you trust, what they're hearing. What do their ears tell them? Okay, I'm showing you what my ears tell me, okay? I'm showing you what other people's have shown. Everybody that comes in here gets different measurements. We all have that accentuation. It's probably evolutionary because as you lose hearing, as you get older, humans probably want a little bit more accentuation of higher frequencies to be able to recognize higher pitch, whether it's a yell, a scream, a predator, usually is in that frequency range. Probably that's evolutionary that we've created this kind of accentuation over those 2,000 hertz. I'm sure somebody's have studied it. I could probably ask Edgar about it. It's just my hypothesis. But these are things that, this is a variable that I think a lot of people in the hobby don't take into account. They just look at the gear. Oh, NBL speakers, they suck. Or NBL speakers are great. Or, you know, XYZ DAC is great. You're always just attributing everything to the gear and synergy of the gear. No, synergy has to do with also your ears. How do you hear in your room? And that's why I think it's important, why I wanted to show you my room, my ears, other people's ears, the difference and the delta, such that you can now include that in your evaluation of who you're going to trust, who will sync with you. And in most cases, what you're going to realize, hopefully what you realize, is that you should trust your ears, okay? Your ears. And be honest about it. You know, don't just, that's a whole nother story, whether people hear things that aren't real. But at least don't just blindly trust people that are trying to tell you what to hear, tell you what to buy, tell you what is good or not good. Lots of things can be different for you than other people. And that's the macro point of this video. But super powerful, when you get a Bach, you have this ability now. In-ear, in-room measurements, binaurally, so powerful. Another thing it will show you, and let me show you this real quick. Impulse response. Now, this looks a little bit jagged because it's accentuated pretty high. It's only a magnitude of 0.5, and here's 5 milliseconds. But even impulse response is different for JR versus me. This is me, my impulse response at my listening position and my ears. This was the measurements for JR. The reflection around 5 milliseconds was a lot greater. Now, he was sitting up higher in the chair. I sit up a little bit lower in the chair. I had my seat reclined back. That would tell me this reflection probably is coming from the ceiling. And when he's up higher, the magnitude is different, is higher, and then it comes a little bit quicker if you look here, and a little bit higher magnitude. When I'm doing it, it's a little bit delayed, this reflection right here, and a little bit lower magnitude. So this can help you find reflections in your room that then you can treat. This is one thing I'm going to do in the future, is try to definitely isolate this one reflection and get rid of it, okay? Helps me. This tool alone is going to help me, whether I used a Bach or not, get a better impulse response. It's already quite good, impressive, but this little thing is something that now you will know about and can do something about it with certain experiments. And then with a gated spot, much longer, it's not as drastic. You know, this is in reality how good this impulse response is. When we zoom in on a very narrow range, like we're doing with the other measurements, it makes it look more drastic than it is. But this is a very good impulse response for a speaker system. And Edgar was very impressed. He's seen a lot of measurements. So he's very impressed by my room and the GR Research and Extreme. But it doesn't matter. You can still always improve things. And if you're an audiophile, why wouldn't you? Instead of randomly trying tweaks and things that don't ever give you any kind of feedback for sure, that you can hang your hat on and you have to worry about placebo effect, confirmation bias, that everybody's susceptible to. Instead of, you know, doing that, and I'm not saying don't do those things. You can buy tweaks and other things that aren't measurable. That's fine. But I'm saying, why not focus and prioritize first things that you know at your listening position hit both you and people in your room repeatedly. There's a reflection there. Let's see if we can treat that. This is the things I would encourage you to prioritize. And one of the side benefits that the Bacch product does, now giving you those binaural in-ear measurements. So hopefully you found this helpful. I got a lot of other features to show you in a future video. So if you haven't subscribed, make sure you do so. But there's a lot of cool stuff. You can record binaurally. I'm going to be doing some recordings in my room in the near future. Let me show you this recorder with the binaural mics, and then you can probably hear on headphones what it sounds like to be in my room. Pretty cool. I can do some recordings with a filter. You give me your room measurements. You give me your speaker distance from your head and the separation between the speakers. Guess what? I can create a filter to almost simulate as if you had the Bacch. It's not going to give you 100%, but it'll give you a little bit. So that's going to be a perk if you do join my membership section. Again, join in the WhatsApp, hit the join button. You'll get in my WhatsApp. You'll have direct access to me almost hourly. I'm on that, in that WhatsApp group contributing. And if you give me your measurements, I'll create you a file. You'll get the ability to hear what the Bacch does on a recording if you give me a WAV file, or I can choose one for you. A little value added just to let you know, if you join the membership section, that's one of the perks you'll get. Another thing, well, I'll show you this stuff down here. Let's not get into this stuff yet. This is going to get a lot more complicated. I haven't even gotten into this stuff yet. Let me show you another thing. Yeah, guys, this is a super powerful program. Lots of stuff that I haven't even covered yet. The headphone thing is amazing. I'm going to cover that in a totally separate video. You also have the ability to add DSPs in the frequency domain. Remember, the Bacch doesn't do anything in the frequency domain. It's mostly time, phase domain type stuff. But you can load other room corrections into this filter. So the all-in-one Bacch solution with a DAC is going to be the #1 product I think I recommend for most people. The audio comes with the DAC. The DO, if you like your own DAC, there's a product for you. If you're really on a tighter budget and you don't mind doing a little bit more massaging and computer work, and having a little bit more challenges, the Bacch4Mac is for you at a lower price point. So hopefully you found this helpful. Hope you found the macro point I'm trying to get across helpful. If so, sign up, subscribe, and I'll see you back here soon.